Hello aspirants, welcome to PW OnlyIAS. I'm your head precinct with the daily analysis of the Hindu from 30th of December 2024. Let's begin with today's analysis. So this is a QR code where you can basically find the particular PDF along with the material that is required for your preparation. Next are the topics that we have taken for today's analysis. Air accidents and safety, wealth tax, Rakhigarhi new findings, animal welfare framework in India. Next, we have the Upper Siang project, Kuchipudi and PM internship schemes, which are present in the newspaper The Hindu. Let's begin with the analysis. Okay, the main topics. You would have seen all these images in today's newspaper and the articles that are also present. So please understand, when you read about these, we all know that in UPSC, they're not going to ask you, okay, which plane crashed in South Korea, jet crash took place. All those things are not going to be asked. This topic again would be asked with reference to India also, because we had certain editorials also regarding that, certain other aspects also giving it a angle of Russian and Ukraine war that is going on. So overall, if you realize, we need to see air accidents and safety perspective from a broader dimension. And that is why, again, dealing with respect to India becomes important, is because one more topic we'll be dealing in few days is with respect to the bombing threat that was coming. Now, that is also another dimension, but over here, we're going to deal with the overall framework with respect to the air safety, along with it, the accidents that are on the rise, and what are the reasons behind it. So let's have a look at this and analyze. Okay, whenever we are talking about the aspects, now there are many things which you will come across when you talk about the accidents with respect to the aircrafts. Please understand, if you see, look at the reports also, air travel is one of the, I would say, the safest means of travel. If you compare it with the road accidents, if you compare it with the rail accidents or the other forms of transportation, it is considered the safest means of transportation. Yes, we have had accidents because the number of people traveling in the aircraft, if it is a larger aircraft, can be even 500 people also. And when the crash unfortunately takes place, it leads to a life of many people. Agreed. But along with it, one should analyze that it is the safest means of transport. In spite of that, you'll be realizing there are various problems that do arise when we talk about the accidents that come across. Now see, one by one, we'll be seeing the various dimensions of it and analyzing it, why these accidents can come up or what are the reasons behind that. So first is the aircraft design and manufacturing. Now let me be very clear. Just giving an example also. If you compare, there are two major companies that manufacture the passenger aircrafts, major companies. One is Boeing and one is Airbus. Now, if you compare both of them, you realize that earlier Boeing, which is again a American company, which overall you realize that used to dominate the aircraft manufacturing at a wage level. It used to occupy, let us say, 80 to 85, 90% of the total manufacturing. Later on, you saw that Airbus rose. The reason behind it was Airbus rise was the major contributory factor was their cost efficiency, their aircraft designing being more efficient, along with its safety perspective given a lot of importance. If why I've mentioned this point is, see, recently, if you go back few years back, Air India had to basically halt certain particular aircrafts of Boeing because of their certain designing issues that did creep up. And because of that, what happened, there was a sense of possibility of an accident taking place. And that is why please realize that because little defect, we won't call it a defect, but in a way, yes, it is a defect. And any problem in an aircraft will lead to what? Thousands of lives. So aircraft designing and their manufacturing itself is a series of processes that takes months and even years to manufacture one aircraft. And any loophole in that will lead to the problems with respect to the accidents that take place. So one of the major things is aircraft designing and along with it, manufacturing of the aircraft. Second is with respect to the flight operations. Now see, very often it is seen that certain professions, like because you are flying an aircraft. Now, the more you fly, more expert you are with respect to handling the situations also. Now, over here, flight pilot training and how the crew is, along with it, becomes very important for the flight operations. See, supposingly you come across a situation where the pilot knows that there's a very less possibility of, let us say, that normal landing can take place. So there is an emergency landing that has to take place. Now you have, let us say, few seconds to think what can be the possible solution. And in that case, the training again becomes very important. Along with it, training not only theoretical perspective, obviously this is something you have to fly. Along with it becomes important how many hours you have flown through various aircrafts and various situations that you have tackled. Now please understand, now there are obviously various softwares, various simulations that are there, but again, that is not something that is real in the sense. So that is why when you actually come across such situations where you realize that certain instrument or major component of avionics has failed, or let us say your landing gear, that landing gear in a simple sense, the wheels that come out, that landing gear is not working, how do you land? So that is where the mind and the training and the mental health of a patient, of a pilot becomes very, very important. Please understand, pilot training over here does not mean that you know how to use a wheel or how to use the instrument cluster in a pilot. It is also very important with respect to the mental health of a pilot, because they have to fly rigorously. We'll be seeing FDTL also later on, we'll tell you. So in that case, mental health of the patients become very important. I'll be highlighting this particular topic later on also in this discussion. And if that doesn't happen, possibility what happens is, please, it is very similar to you preparing for civil services. Supposingly you're going for a preliminary examination. Tomorrow you have your prelims examination and you do not sleep the whole night. Due to any reason, whether it is stress, whether whatever be the reason, I can guarantee you, your marks will decrease by 10 to 15 marks on an average, what you could have got if you would have had a sound sleep. Similarly, the pilots also face an issue where a lot of stress is there. They have a very strict routine. They have to fly for hours and hours continuously to various parts of the country or across the world. And that leads to a lot of anxiety related issues. You're away from your family also. And that is a core ingredient which again is very often skipped during the training part, because the training part basically includes the aspect that how you have to fly and deal with the situations only. The mental health part is again very important. Next is ATC, air traffic control. Now, there have been cases, now please understand, many will be asking what is air traffic control. Please understand, whenever you, let us give it in simple words, whenever you are going to an airport, you will be realizing there's a huge tower-like structure with glasses all around. Now that is basically an air traffic control office over there in a way, which is basically controlling which plane has to land, which is permitted to, let us say, fly. So a permission is given through the air traffic control. Now please understand, earlier on, everything used to be done manually. Now things are automated. But again, in spite of that also, you realize that a lot of human intervention is required. Any minor error also on the part of the person in the air traffic control. A lot of people are there. If you go to the IGI airport, you'll be realizing about 50, 60 people are there inside the air traffic control. Obviously, there are others also for domestic. They are smaller size. But any minor error from the side of the air traffic control can lead to a lot of problems. Do you realize there have been cases even in the United States also, where you saw that a plane just flew and the other plane just landed, and that came in the news because it was just few seconds gap was there. Had that gap not been there, they would have crashed or collided. Now over here, the responsibility also lies with the air traffic control, that you give a permission for an aircraft to land. On the other hand, you permitted an aircraft to fly. And these accidents taking place is also the responsibility of the air traffic control, where glitches can happen on their part also. Because you have a software which guides you, but again, the permission has to be given manually by the people who are there. Yes, you're permitted to fly and or land. That is how it happens. So any minor glitches from this can lead to a lot of accidents with respect to the aircrafts. Next, maintenance and inspection. Now, this is something very important. See, many airlines, especially the low-cost airlines, you will be realizing that in India, a trend after Air Deccan came up. You must have seen in the movies also that Air Deccan was one of the first aircrafts which used a means of affordable pricing, where in a very, let us say, small amount or very meager amount you could fly. And after that, you realize that various aircraft, SpiceJet, Indigo also has a policy. So you can fly at a very cheaper rate. Obviously, we have the schemes like Udan also. Now, what happens because of that is the number of times an aeroplane is flying is twice or thrice that it was flying earlier on. Now the wear and tear that happens is of a very high degree. Now you'll be saying, obviously there is inspection. Yes, there is. But what happens is when the wear and tear increases, there's a possibility of an aircraft or some mishap happening also increases. Whenever a aircraft is checked, okay, you will be seeing the landing gear being checked. You'll be realizing that, okay, fuel is being fueled, all the things are being cleaned. But the problem that arises is because of the number of times a aeroplane is flying, and the standards with the maintenance and operation that we are doing is not at par with what the United States or the European companies have. And that is why there's a possibility of little loophole being left leads to what? A problem of a plane, let us say, malfunctioning, or let us say crashing, even some accidents taking place. So maintenance and inspection is a very, very important dimension where we have observed that certain loopholes being left leads to a lot of issue. Next is with respect to emergencies. Now see, emergency situation is again very, very important over here. See, whenever you enter an aircraft, you will be realizing that they tell you by default whether you are a frequent flyer also, you need to, how you need to manage. If there is an emergency, the oxygen mask will come down, and there are emergency doors on the front and the back, and all those things are told. That is fine. But do you realize something, that in cases of emergency also, the response of the, again, very similar to this point, but response of the pilot as well as the crew becomes also very important. Crew over here, the stewardess and the steward who are basically there in your serving you. In a simple words, air host or air hostesses that are there, along with the pilots, becomes very important. In the emergency situation, see, there is a difference between, let us say, a situation where certain malfunctioning has taken place, and again you want to respond to that and land it, it is fine. But there are certain cases where you realize that either you will survive or the plane will crash. In that particular case, what happens is that the response time with respect to how the pilots think and how the coordination between the ATC takes place becomes very important. See, there was a movie also, Sully, in which the plane had to land in a Colorado River. Now the air traffic control had told that no, you will not be able to land, you go to some other airport, and the pilot, the captain Sully said, no, it is not possible. It is out of my experience of decades of years. I will have to land it here. You prepare the emergency situation. You realize that the pilot violated the air traffic controls instruction in that case because the experience that the pilot had. Now, this is also a very important dimension where again we would say the experience, training, obviously. Training is one thing, but experience over the decades becomes another thing. And at that moment of time, how you respond. That while Captain Sully landed the aircraft in the Colorado River, you will be realizing it was very shocking and very good to hear that not a single life was lost. Had Captain Sully basically turned the aircraft and followed the instructions of ATC, you would have realized that nobody would have been alive because the engines were not working of that aircraft. Now, please understand, there is because after the movie also you realize that the perspective on what the air traffic control also tells you is based on simulation model. Simulation means that it calculates the fuel that is left in the aircraft, it calculates the altitude, and based on that it says, okay, this is the distance you can cover. But realize this, that there are various unforeseen things, the weather conditions that are there, which is very dynamic. Then you have certain, let us say, birds coming on your way. You don't realize that there are certain situations, how many people are there where you want to land. All these things can only be calculated through the mind of the pilot. Over there, handling of the emergency situation is one which, even if accidents takes place, how you can save their life becomes important. This is something where the intellect and IQ becomes important of the pilot. Next is weather monitoring. Now, please see, if you realize that one of the major dimensions, if you would have traveled by the aircraft, you would have realized that repeatedly the aspect of turbulence is coming, turbulence is there, your planes are shaking. This is something that you see very often. Weather monitoring becomes important is because see we have had a lot of satellites there. We can easily now monitor also a lot of things, turbulences also, and to a great extent there is a lot of development with respect to weather forecasting. But we also know that the weather or climatic conditions are so dynamic in nature that they keep on changing at a very rapid rate. And something that was clear might become, let us say, lead to a lot of cyclonic like conditions over there, and that might be very problematic for the air traffic. And a lot of accidents do happen during that time also, because the turbulence extent is so much that it cannot basically tolerate the structure of the aircraft cannot tolerate the pressure that is created. Again, over here, aircraft design and manufacturing aspect comes. Next, technology. Now see, very important. See, if you see Airbus 380, it is the largest aircraft. They have now Airbus has stopped manufacturing that. It is one of the most automated aircrafts, passenger aircrafts you can come across. It is the largest aircraft. It is completely full of technology. Over there, even the landing that is taking place, the pilots are sitting there. It is again stimulated on its own, and everything is fed on the software, and it lands automatically also, with the least intervention on the side of the pilot. Now, what happens is, when there is a technical glitch or there is some short circuiting, it is a device, it can happen. Over there also, what happens many times, that leads to problems where technical glitch leading to certain very important components not working, and that can result in the accidents of the aircraft also. That is again one other very, very important dimension that we see about tech aspect. Next is human factors. Now, human factors, see, human factors, or let us say human error that arises, is again because the pilot is the one who is flying. Though the technology might be there, a human plays a very important role. Every aircraft, every airlines is not having an Airbus A380. Obviously, there are a lot of automation that are there. There is an aspect of autopilot, and autopilot, please remember, doesn't mean everything is done by the plane. Autopilot in a primitive sense basically means that maintains basically an altitude at which you have kept it, and obviously it will detect also if the radar is there, that any other aircraft is coming, so it can increase or decrease the height accordingly. It doesn't mean that it will do everything on its own. Yes, in Airbus A380, the autopilot is of a very advanced level where things can be done, not in case of the other aircrafts which are old. Particularly right now, which is with Air India or Indigo, they are not of that capacity. Now, when we come to the human factor, so what happens? Again, sleep, mental health issues, the mood of the pilot also, these things do influence. Because why? Please understand, it doesn't mean that if the mood is wrong that the pilot will crash. No. If the mood is wrong or bad, if there is subtle mental health issues, that will ultimately result in the decision-making power not being as good as in the normal scenarios. So an error might creep that will lead to, let us say, a possible scenario of an, let us say, crashing. Next is geopolitics. Now, please understand this aircraft crash that is taking place over here, dangerous skies. See, there have been issues. Now, what is happening is the aircraft crashing over here, or various accidents are taking place. They're basically saying that because of the Ukraine and the Russian war that is taking place, various anti-drone missiles are also there in the border. So any aircraft that is flying, there's a possibility that it can be hit by either sides of the missiles, even a smaller missiles in order to destroy a drone also, but that is very lethal for the aeroplanes. Now, geopolitical angle, that is wars going on between the countries, is also one of the factors that is leading to possibility of what? Aircrafts crashing, or they being, let us say, harmed by the defense mechanism of the various countries. These are the aspects that you should be knowing from a very holistic perspective, that what are the dimensions, what can lead to a lot of crashes or problems in the aircrafts, right? Now, let's have a look. If we talk about the air safety in India, please understand, air safety in India is a critical aspect of the country's civil aviation sector and witnessed substantial growth in the recent years. The reason behind it is that Udan scheme have been there, and very cheap flights have been there, because affordable nature, rather than providing all with the luxuries like food and all, cost cutting has been done, and that is basically leading to flights become very affordable. Now, people who were traveling in, let us say, second AC or the first AC also now shifted towards what? Using the flight as a means of transportation. The regulatory framework, infrastructure development, and adherence to international safety standards plays a very important role. Now, please understand, over here, the Office of the Director General of Civil Aviation under the Ministry of Civil Aviation is a regulatory body responsible for overseeing civil aviation activities, including safety, licensing, airworthiness in India. In 2023, India's aviation safety oversight rank jumped to 55th position from 112th position. Now, please again understand, these ranking is fine, but again, there are a lot of loopholes over here. Recently, you would have realized that a famous YouTuber also, Flying Beast, had mentioned certain loopholes with respect to company Air Asia also, where, see, when you are landing a flight also, there are a lot of mechanisms through which you land. Now, Sometimes what happens is various means are adopted by the airlines in order to land in such a way so that minimal amount of fuel is basically spent and lesser amount of maintenance cost is there. But that hinders the safety of the passengers also. So what you sometimes realize now, landing being done at a very rapid rate or rugged way, there are various means behind that so that you can save the cost also. So this was basically highlighted, and this went against the regulatory or the safety standards of what the DGCA has basically mentioned. That is why the YouTuber Flying Beast, who was a former pilot also, was removed from the job also. So that is where, please understand, the airlines also tend to compromise with the safety because they can save certain amount of money. These things, that is why the regulatory framework over here becomes very important in order to regulate if any nuisance is basically happening with respect to any stakeholder of the civil aviation industry. Now, the aviation sector in India is at crossroads, grasping with the juxtaposition of rapid growth and critical safety concerns. Statements of Union Minister and DGC emphasize that paramount importance of safety appear contradictory when juxtaposed with the ongoing safety lapses. That is why, please understand, various parameters, challenges, regulatory failures, all a proper analysis is very important that we did right now. See, proper laws, regulatory bodies in the form of DGCA at the ground level, regular inspection and maintenance, and all these things become important. Along with it, very importantly, that very often the airlines basically try to bypass it because in order to save their cost becomes a problematic situation. That is something that needs to be checked and inspected over here. Now see, there's one more thing, issue that basically when we were talking about the issue of the mental health issues about the pilots also, over here this topic becomes important. There's a concept known as FDTL, flight time duty limitation. Now please understand why it becomes important is because this is related to the recent comments that have been made by the DGCA with respect to the pilots also. Now see, the issue of fatigue management within the aviation industry is critical aspect of ensuring the flight safety and the crew well-being. Now please understand for yourself also that if the pilot is flying, there is also a crew also there who's also flying with the pilot in the aircraft, and they have to work for hours and hours. That also lead to their mental health conditions being bad, and then obviously various other repercussions, errors might be committed from their side also. So in January 2024, Union Ministry announced a revised FDTL regulations to addressing the pilot fatigue. The regulations included increased rest period, redefined night duty, regular fatigue reports to be shared by the airlines. However, subsequent deferral of the implementation deadline by DGCA due to airlines' concern highlight a significantly regulatory framework that underscores the challenges. Now see, there is a difference, contradiction of commercial pressure versus safety. Why? See, now if you fly one sector, let us say from Delhi to, let us say, Mumbai, and let us say on an average, what is expected is 8 to 8 hours of duty that a pilot should be doing, but their duty is extended to 12, 13 hours, going to various other sectors and then returning. So what happens is that the commercial benefit for the airlines is that the various routes are covered using the same pilot. Now you realize that the person is doing extra work with the same amount of money being paid. And what happens? The commercial pressure and the safety becomes a contradictory aspect over here. That is why we were discussing over here. It leads to a fatigue for the pilot also, who's regularly flying, and because of that, when the fatigue or mental health issues arises, then obviously the safety and concerns of the people who are basically flying comes at stake. That is what the problem over here lies, right? Next, comparative analysis. If you see, Japan, Singapore, United Kingdom are known for their rigorous approach to the aviation severity and adherence to the standards. These countries prioritize fatigue management and invest in comprehensive regulatory framework. For instance, Japan and Singapore emphasize fatigue management through regular rest periods, stringent duty limitations for the flight crew. And similarly, UK also emphasize on the importance of fatigue and risk assessment. See, these are the things that make very important with respect to who are flying. Obviously, first, please understand, geopolitical things are important. Yes, you can change the routes. But over here, condition of the plane, the condition of the pilot, that includes all the mental health and physical health, the conditions of the crew along with it, and the inspection and maintenance becomes very important over here. Whether it is with respect to the tire, whether it is with respect to the any leakages taking place, whether it is with respect to the avionics, all these things are very, very important. That is why it is expected that certain rigorous improvements need to be made. The government is basically pondering over it also from the recent examples of the world that are taking place. So Government will come with new guidelines also with respect to the civil aviation, and that we will be discussing as they come. So this was a topic with respect to the flight aircraft safety and concerns. Should the wealth tax be reinstalled in India? The topic is wealth tax. Now, please understand what is wealth tax. Now, by default, you realize that when I'm talking about the word tax, so that means certain money is taken from your pocket, right? Now, some money is being taken from your pocket with respect to wealth. That means some people who are very rich, some extra tax is imposed on them, right? So, what is wealth tax? Wealth tax is a tax on an individual or entity's net worth, typically targeting the super rich. Now, people do realize that this concept did exist for decades previously also in India. The reason behind this, at that time in India, was purely a socialistic country where the focus was that the progressive taxation should be such that parity or concentration of wealth is not there. So this was a means through which if somebody is earning a lot of money, you impose an extra tax on that. Now this is seen from an aspect that the person being taxed who is super rich, you can use that money for, let us say, development aspect for the country or other reasons, let us say social sector schemes. But for the person who is earning more income, he'll say, why should I be giving the more money because I'm earning more money? Now that will lead to people or the super rich moving out of the country also, or they will be using means of tax evasions also then. So these are various positive and negatives also. We'll be analyzing that. So what is here is with respect to the tax. Wealth tax is a tax on the individuals and entities' net worth, targeting the super rich who are the very rich people. History of wealth tax. See, Switzerland, wealth taxation is not a new concept. It dates back to 19th century. Then other countries followed this suit, including Netherlands and Sweden. India joined the list in 1957 when the finance minister T.T. Krishnachari implemented the wealth tax abolishment. However, over the time, the number of countries imposing this tax dwindled. For instance, the number of OECD countries levying the tax fell from 12 to 4 in 2017. So what the reason behind it was, we saw a regime during the time of early 1950s, 60s, 70s. Various countries did impose this tax because at that time, they thought this money could be used for, let us say, the extra money that is being earned by the rich can be used for, let us say, development aspects. Even India had that aspect because it was a socialistic economy. But now we realize that when the dimensions of the thinking changed, because we had to open our market also. So the question that arises is, should the wealth tax be reinstalled, which was removed? That is what the question is. Now see, wealth tax in India. Now let's see. The wealth tax in India was enacted in 1957 following the recommendations of Kaldor Committee in 1955. This can be asked in your prelims also. To efforts to rationalize the tax system. It imposed 1% tax on a net worth exceeding 30 lakh income annually, applicable to individuals, Hindu undivided families and companies. Abolition. Wealth tax was abolished in 2015 due to several challenges. Why it was abolished? Because there was a lot of litigation. People started filing cases in the Supreme Courts and the High Courts. Why should we be paying the extra taxes if we are extra working, earning extra income? Along with it, we realized that people started to what? Then misuse, let us say, use means of tax evasion in order to avoid paying the taxation. So all those things did come up. So extensive litigation, high compliance burden for the taxpayers because you're adding extra tax on the people or high net worth individuals or the companies. So that will lead to basically what? A lot of burden on the taxpayer. Next is significant administrative cost. A lot of, again, you have to identify the people in reality who are earning more. Then again, all the administrative cost will increase in order to do that. So along with it, please realize it was the dimension was also that it was not fit for the investment perspective of the companies who were coming from abroad also wanted to come, or for that matter, the people who are in India who want to make investment in India would not, because they would have seen that 1% will again go because we're earning more. So because of that, these things are basically removed. But on the other hand, what government did? It replacement measures to offset the revenue loss. The government introduced alternative means by increasing surcharge on the super rich. Surcharge for individuals increased from 2% to 12%, whose income exceeded 1 crore. Surcharge for the companies increased from 2% to 12% for companies earning 10 crore. Again, you started taxing more of the super rich again. Now that again had a very similar ripple effect also. That do you realize that why individuals start nowadays particularly going to Dubai and settling there? Either they're going to Singapore and settling with their companies, either they're going to United States also. Why? Because they feel that earning more is a way through which government will be taxing them more. And that is why we see one of the reasons why people are moving out. The high net worth individuals are also moving out. There's a reason behind these types of taxations that have been there. Now, arguments for the wealth tax. Why wealth tax should be imposed or reinstalled? Let us see the arguments, then against that also. Addressing inequality. We realize that high level of wealth concentration reduce opportunities and capabilities. Top 0.04% of the population could help fund the health and education and healthier and educated workforce, aligns with the development goals. Now there, the perspective is that inequality is there. We realize that 1% of the top Indian population occupy 42% of the India's wealth. Now you can see the difference that other 99% is occupying the remaining. People assume, or let us say this concept, addressing inequality means the people who are earning more should be taxed most as a responsibility towards the country, so that that can be used for, let us say, health, education sectors. Again, there are pros and cons by saying this also, because if someone is earning, that doesn't mean he will have the complete responsibility for all the infrastructure that others are needing. It is the role of the government also for that matter. But one means is seen as a means of reducing inequality, because you know, as even the directive principles talk about reducing inequalities. It is focusing on reducing concentration of wealth also. So that aligns with the philosophical perspective of India. Next is global examples. Countries like UK and Norway impose wealth taxes with minimal capital flight due to strong public infrastructure and services, encourages international collaboration for transparency and wealth tracking. This is also because we realize that globally also such practices have been there, so it can be imposed. But again, we realize that every point has a contradictory view also. We should keep that in mind. Technological and institutional feasibility. India has advanced systems to track economic activity. Example, tax database, digital infrastructure. With proper framework, wealth tax could be effectively implemented. Now see, one of the arguments given why it was removed in 2015 was it led to rise in administrative cost. But if you're using technology, then that administrative cost will by default decrease. So that is not a reason merely for removal. So they're saying technology can basically deal with that. Next is developmental impact. Revenues could finance health, education, and the other sectors, helps create fairer distribution of resources, as we have discussed. So these are the arguments that are being presented. Now comes the aspect. What could be the reasons for not imposing the wealth tax or not having the wealth tax? First is challenges the wealth measurement. Difficult to define and measure wealth comprehensively. Taxing liquid asset could incentivize holding unproductive asset like real estate and gold. Now, firstly, it is detecting how much money is actually being there in the pockets of the people is not very easy. You know that very well. In India, we realize that 3 to 4% of the people are paying income tax, though people in earning in crores are a very large number. Many people who have, let us say, earning through various work also try to show them in the form of agriculture income so that they can avoid that income tax also. So defining that who is actually in reality earning that much money, whatever be the limit that might be imposed, is again very difficult. Then along with it, if you start taxing the liquid assets, then what will happen? People will start investing in other sources like gold and all, then becomes even further difficult to measure that, and then it will lead to further crisis also. Next is capital flight. Higher taxes could drive wealthy individual and business out of the country, reducing long-term economic growth perspective. This is what is happening right now. Excessive taxation is leading to people going to Dubai and settling. We never imagined that people who are earning decent enough also are moving to Dubai also and other countries. Why? They realize that why should we pay so much tax? Just for the reason that we are earning more. We could save that and keep it while we are staying in Dubai. This is one of the reasons people moving out also. And that is basically leading to a lot of, that is denting the economy now, and in future is going to dent it even further. Next, if we see inefficiency in redistributive taxes. Redistribution through taxation are not proven effective in improving the well-being. See, economic growth rather than redistribution addresses. Now, for example, let us say the mechanism means over here that you are taxing the rich, right? And taxing the rich excess than in comparison to the other population, and the excess that is collected is used in a means of, let us say, education, health, and given to the people in a form of that as a duty of the government. But please understand that this is not even properly implemented. What is the guarantee also that the money that is being taxed might be used for actually the development perspective? More importantly, what the point also says is that it is the economic growth which will lead to the development of the people as a whole. So this is again being criticized over here. Next, implementation challenges. Tax evasion is a common through wealthier shifting their proxies. Survey and data collection issues does come up. Public finance principle, revenue and expenditure should be decoupled. Public goods should be funded through effective taxes like personal income tax and GST. So again, see, again, the revenue and the expenditure are very closely related. We need to further identify what are the sources of revenue, and based on that, we should be realizing that what we are going to expend also, there is a close relationship, but we need to understand that merely taxing the rich just as a means of revenue is not a right means. We need to, let us say, uh, have those avenues through which a proper income comes without hampering the economic growth, because you realize that if you're taxing the excessive rich, because you are assuming that it is a major source of revenue or can be a major source of revenue, is against the policy of the basic public finance that you takes place. Because what it leads to is, please understand, the main objective is growth and development. In a short term, it will realize that if you tax the rich excessively, initial amount will come. Later on, they will leave the country. So overall, what will happen? Long-term sufferings. So these are the things which basically talks about against the wealth taxation. Let's move ahead. 500-year-old wealth water management system. Topic 3, Rakhigarhi. See, Rakhigarhi is located in the Hisar district of Haryana, approximately 27 kilometers from the Jhajjar region in Jhajjar-Hakra river plain. It is one of the oldest and the largest cities of the Indus Valley civilization, dating back to 6500 BC. Now, what has been found, please understand, archaeologists discovered traces of water storage area between the mound 1 and 2 of Rakhigarhi village in the Hisar district. The structure depth is 3.5 to 4 feet, highlights the advanced water management practices by the Harappan civilization. So, we all have seen, even in Dholavira also, the evidences with respect to water management are there. We have seen intricate drainage systems being there. We have seen all that in other parts also. But when we see Rakhigarhi, one of the largest sites of Indus Valley civilization, we see various other findings are being there, and see the intricate level of water management systems have been there. So let us analyze or see what it is. Let's have a look. Elite habitation zone, Mound 1, 2 and 3 have been identified as an elite zone containing massive structures indicating habitation by the upper class. We've already seen the aspect of, let us say, in Harappan also, the citadel concept being there and the lower town being there. So again, similarly over here, elite habitation zone was discovered. So this is something different, where more type of facilities would have been there and when bigger structures would have been there. River dependency, evidence point out now extent 𝐂𝐇𝐀 or Drishtavati river, located 300 meters from the site, as a vital means of water resource for the people of the time. Now, code drilling and findings from the Zoological Survey of India confirm the presence of 𝐂𝐇𝐀 riverbed near the Mound 7. And Drishtavati river drying up along with the Saraswati river likely triggered water crisis, which contributed to the decline of the Harappan civilization. So, see, you realize the major civilizations that have basically developed are because of the water resource being close to them. When we realize that rivers or the source of water declined, because that led to drinking water scarcity, along with it the agriculture disruption would have taken place. So we realize overall the city started declining when we see that the rivers over here started drying up. So this is again the river dependency. We saw that there was people were dependent upon this particular river. Along with it, there was an elite habitation. Now comes the water management technique. See, overall we need to analyze urban water supply and drainage system. We realize well-planned drainage network is there. Mohenjo-daro, Harappan Valley civilization. We realize drains were covered with bricks and connected to bathing platforms and homes. Wastewater were directed into soak pits to prevent any contamination. Example, Mohenjo-daro. Brick-lined drains along with the streets were there. Dholavira, large interconnected drains were basically channeled into the residential areas. Along with it, please understand, fresh water and the sewage water completely separated also. So there is no mixing of the water that takes place. So very sophisticated network have been there. Then you realize water storage reservoirs and tanks. Large tanks were constructed for the communal use. Now you can see these tanks are there. Now, in Dholavira, you realize that a lot of step wells are there, massive reservoirs being built. In Lothal also, dockyard provisions for water storage were there. So this is some of the examples, the way the arrangement is made, way a waterproofing layer was basically used. Gypsum were being used during that time, so that water, it is basically in a frame of waterproofing is done. And this is again one of the examples that you can see. Next is wells, private and public wells. Wells were common feature in the Harappan cities, with steady supply of water was there. In Mohenjo-daro, over 700 wells have been identified. We also have canal and irrigation system that was present in the Harappan Valley civilization. Harappans constructed canals to divert water to irrigation. Channels were designed to ensure controlled flow of water. Example, Ghagar Hakra system likely utilized irrigation through evidence is indirect. Rainwater harvesting, again, structures are designed to maximize the rainwater collection. Dholavira, sophisticated rainwater harvesting systems have been there, where basically it was a means, a pumping mechanism is also there, through which basically water was stored in various tanks and stored in case for irrigation aspects also and for drinking water aspects also. Next is adaptation to the river systems. Please understand, dependency of rivers. Harappan civilization, again, Harappan Indus Valley civilization or River Indus Valley civilization is something which is based on the name of Harappan city, right? But it includes a lot of settlements over there. Now, every settlement, one way or the other, indirectly, were related to one or the other form of rivers. Now, if you see, Harappans relied on rivers like Indus, Saraswati, and Drishtavati for the water resources. Evidence suggests that they stored water during the peak season when the water supply is excess, particularly during the summer times when it is fed by the river also, which is receiving its water from the melting of the glaciers, along with it through the rainfall. So, Rakhigarhi evidence of water storage linked to Drishtavati river. Kalibangan remnants of the riverbank settlement, signs of the water collection was seen there. Sanitation and wastewater management, integrated sanitation system. Harappan prioritized hygiene, separation of drain from the for waste disposal was there. Again, in Mohenjo-daro, you realize that had bathrooms connected to the street drains, so that drinking water is completely separated from the wastewater. Next, animal welfare framework in the zoo, topic 4. Now, please understand, what do you mean by animal welfare? Now, see, 5 freedoms outlined in the 5 aspects of animal welfare of human control. They are developed in response to the 1965 UK government report on livestock husbandry, and they were formalized in 1975 press statement by UK Farm and Animal Council. Now, please understand, when I talk about animal freedom or welfare, there are a lot of international meetings that are held. 5 freedoms outlines with respect to animal welfare have been outlined. Or in a way, when we talk about animal, we realize that we need to understand why this topic basically came up also. See, when I talk about animal welfare, we need to see that holistic perspective from the aspect of protection, taking care also, and along with it, nurturing also becomes important. Now, if I want to see from the aspect of the concept of animal welfare, we realize that it was a response to the 1965 a UK report which focused on the aspect of animal husbandry also. Over here, the concept of animal welfare came. Over there also, again, the aspect of commercialization was more important, but did come up with the aspect of animal welfare. Now, if you want to understand this also, please see, when I'm talking about animal welfare, it will include the aspect of, see, protection. This is basically will form your definition also. Protection, caring, nurture or nurturing. And please understand, when you are nurturing also, there is very important aspect is that nurture means love and care that is provided by the side of the people who have the pets, along with it policies and the side of the government also. Next principle, in a way, you can say, is with respect to collaborations. Now, collaborations over here means people to people. First, people to people. Why? Because supposing someone doesn't want a pet, and instead of leaving it on the road, that can be given to another person. Along with it, we realize that people to NGOs, along with it, people along with government. This is again becomes very important. And please understand, respect and dignity. These are the things that you should keep in mind. Protection, there should be adequate laws which protect them also. Caring, along with it. Nurture, nurture is how you provide within the basic facilities or basic needs that are required. Collaboration, where people to people connect, people to NGOs connect, people to, let us say, government connect. Along with it, please, if you want to add, over here you can add, obviously, NGO to government connect also. Why these connects are being shown is that because any problem that arises there is basically able to jointly resolve the problem with respect to any animal problem that arises, right? So that is there. Then again, respect and dignity of the animal becomes important. This is what is majorly animal welfare from a holistic perspective. Now, when I talk about approaches to animal welfare, there is, again, we can take it from a scientific approach. What does it mean? Animal welfare scientists use scientific evidence-based approaches where animals' physical and psychological state and its environment is basically taken into consideration. That means whether the health of the animal is fine and psychological state in a way that he or the, let us say, a dog or a female dog, whether they are in a proper surrounding so that their condition or mental health condition is also fine. Because you would be realizing very often when the veterinary doctors are there, they can very well identify the psychological state of the doctor by through the reactions that they do. So this scientific approach is basically dealing with the physical and the psychological or the mental state of the animal. Next is animal rights approach. It advocates a philosophy and legal stance arguing that animals are intrinsic value independent of their usefulness to the humans. It advocates not only improving the living condition and basic needs, but also any human use of animals, including food, clothing, research, and entertainment. This is with respect to the ethical principles and legal arguments. Now, please understand. First is with respect to merely the physical and the mental health. When I talk about the aspect of animal rights approach, it basically says like human beings have rights, animals also have rights. Now, their rights are with respect to, like, for example, let us assume that you tame a dog. Now, that is assume that you are the master and the dog is an animal and you have the right to tame. If the dog doesn't want to be tamed? It is his right. So these things do come up from the perspective that animal also have rights and you have to respect and honor them. Now, this is from the perspective of ethical angle also. Now, please understand one more thing. Like, for example, various skins of the animals are used, and we use people across the world also, now banned in India. In circuses also, we used to use animals. What is that? We realize that in that case, that over there you are using animals for your own pleasure, your own entertainment, for your own benefit. That goes against the basically the animal rights approach, where animals themselves have rights. This is an approach to study it. And it is no right of the man to take away the rights of the animal. So these are the ways through which you can study the animal welfare. Two major approaches, right? Now, if I talk about the framework we are talking, what are the constitutional provision, the legal provision, let us see in India. Article 48A direct the states to endeavor to protect improve the environment and safeguard the forest and wildlife. So while not directly enforceable in court, these are the guidelines for the government. Again, we have Wildlife Protection Act and all, which are basically enforcing these principles in actual reality. Article 51A(g) mandates that every citizen protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, wildlife, and to have compassion for the living creatures. This places a moral obligation on citizens to take care of the animals. Then you have Article 21, right to live life is interpreted by court to include the right to healthy environment, which indirectly supports animal welfare also. Now, this is indirect reference that is taken, that right to life will include that animal welfare should also be included in that. Now, this is one of the interpretations. Directly it is not mentioned, indirectly we are taking it. So these are certain constitutional provisions you can take. Then you have legally the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act 1960. It is a primary legislation in India which defines animal and outlines the various forms of cruelty and imposes penalties in case you're practicing any of them. It allows for the establishment of an organization like Animal Welfare Board of India. Then we have the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, which focuses on the protection of animals and their habitat, regulating hunting, trade, and poaching. Then you have the Indian Penal Code, obviously, now which is We have the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, obviously. Sections of IPC like section 428, 429 deals with offenses related to killing, maiming or injuring animals. Also, serious action can be taken against you. Recent update, the World Zoo Association of Zoos and Aquarium has suspended the Delhi Zoo, the National Zoological Park, from membership due to the concerns about the inadequate living conditions of its sole African elephant. Now see, in a zoo, which is again a region where you are keeping them as a means of, let us say, yes, you're earning revenue out of it also, but protecting those species also, were there, the conditions were so dismal that Delhi Zoo has been suspended from the membership over here of the World Association of Zoos and Aquariums. So now this is where the problem, when you are talking about zoos, you need to take care of the animals also that are there. It should not be that they're in a zoo and means like dummies and they have their no life. Already they are in a closed environment. So one should be very particular about that when you have certain animals in zoos or whatever protected areas there are there, you should maintain a balance and at least provide them with necessities that are required there. Particularly in the zoo, once they are in the wild, obviously they will deal with themselves. Over there, our role would be to stop unnecessary intervention in the region. So this is something, it was recently in the news also, that is why we have taken the aspect of animal welfare. Next, now when we talk about the aspect, you would have seen by now that so many topics were done. Now, if I take a question, what is animal welfare? What is the existing framework in India? Suggest further measures. Measures you can just suggest whatever can be done further. So this is again a question for you. You can practice it. Prelims topics. Siang project to help mitigate flood risk posed by China Arunachal CM. So upper Siang project, let's see. Over here, this is again the Siang river over here. Now see, upper Siang project is proposed 11,000 megawatt hydropower project in the Siang river of Arunachal Pradesh. Siang originally originating near Mount Kailash in Tibet, flowing over 1,000 kilometers eastwards and enter Arunachal Pradesh as Siang and later becomes Brahmaputra in Assam, right? So we can see the framework over here also. The Siang river as it enters, later it becomes Brahmaputra when it is entering Assam region. Before that, it is known as Siang. Now, initially proposed as two separate projects, it was consolidated into one larger project in 2017 to be built by the National Hydroelectric Power Corporation, featuring a 300-meter dam. Upper Siang multipurpose storage is exempt from environmental clearances under the Forest Conservation Amendment Act of 2023. So why amendment? Again, yes, it was violating certain norms, so it was given an exception in this case. Now, this becomes important from the defense and security perspectives also, because we know that China is building a lot of dams in the upper regions of Brahmaputra, along with it one which was discussed on Saturday also, close to the Indo-China border also. Now, over here, this dams also provides as a means where water can be stored. Again, that will be helping, obviously, the mitigate floods also, and obviously will be useful in generation of electricity for the region also. So that becomes important. If water is, let us say, water flows from the side of the Chinese dam, so we have our dam in order to prevent any flood-like situations that might take place. So this is again a means to protect the Assam region also from a lot of flood-like conditions that were being posed by the construction of the Chinese dam. So let's move ahead. Strategic importance. Counters China's hydel project on Tsangpa, particularly a 60,000 megawatt super dam in Tibet's Midong country poses a significant threat to flash flood. So that means it is one of the largest dams being constructed by China. So that will pose a problem to India. If let us say something happens or the water is released, a large amount of water coming to India will lead to flood-like situations. But if we construct a dam at the right place, in case water is released from the side of China also, that will basically prevent any flood-like situations because we have our dam also there. So environmental and social concerns, anti-dam organizations have expressed their concerns, but over here, please remember, yes, there is threat to ecosystem, wildlife habitation, displacement of communities. Even Guwahati High Court had cancelled in 2022 large number of small hydroelectric power projects. But over here, a prospective planning view has been there, where if water is released on the side of China, will lead to chaos through flooding in the region of Northeast. That is why this project is being implemented in order to counter China's intentions. Let's move ahead. Kuchipudi. Origin of Kuchipudi dance, please understand, originated in Andhra Pradesh, where it grew largely as a product of Bhakti movement in the 7th century AD. In the 17th century, the present Kuchipudi style was conceived by Sitendra Yogi, a Vaishnava poet. Now see, evolution can be traced to traditional dance, drama, known under the generic name of Yakshagana, right? So as we move ahead, we realize Kuchipudi dance features. It is known as known for fast footwork. That means the movement of the feet is very quick. Dramatic expressions are there through the face. You can see there is a lot of underlying story that is going on that is expressed through the movement and the facial expressions. Combines with masculine and feminine energy, that is Tandav and Lasya. Distinctive features are dancing and moving on a brass plate. So that means that there's a brass plate and you're moving on that. Dancers need dance, acting, Sanskrit and Telugu skills, music and manuscripts. Requires light makeup and ornaments made of bururu wood. So these are again important things that can be asked in your prelims. Concludes with Tarangam, where a dancer stand on the brass plate and move rhythmically. That there's a brass plate, you're standing on that and you're moving along with the rhythms that is being played. Styles, there are various regional variations due to individual teachers' creativity. Musical instrument, mridagam, tumbles, veena, flute and tambura are basically used. So you can see over here, whatever is being features that I told you are basically mentioned over here. This is basically what? A summary of what we discussed. Clear? Format of Kuchipudi, again, it follows three categories. Nritya, that is pure dance component. Then it has Nritya, which is the expressive with the gestures that you do. Along with this, Natya, that is the drama, that is the underlying story that is going on. So it has these components over here. One is Nritya, that is completely the dance component. Then you have the Nritya, which is the expression through the gestures, and Natya, which is the drama or the component of that particular dance. Begins with the invocation to Lord Ganesha, character introduction and pure dance, followed by expressive dance, that is Nritya, with storytelling through the hand gestures. Kuchipudi performed includes Sutradharas or Nathuvanars. He's a conductor of the entire performance. So they are the ones who are basically coordinating how the dance is taking place. Like we have a master over here. So he's like a master for the dance. Kuchipudi dance is accompanied by Carnatic music. Today, Kuchipudi is performed either as solo, duet, or a group. Historically, it was performed as a dance drama. Now it has changed according to the needs and requirements. Next, PM internship scheme, 6.21 lakh applicants over here. So we know that very well. Recently, 6.5 lakh youth have applied for the internship scheme, and we know that it has opened up the portal with respect to India's top companies. You can apply to them for 1 year. Now, there are a lot of conditions that are there. We have discussed earlier also. The thing is that large number of people have applied. And that is something very important over here. So let us see what it is. Now, it was introduced in 2024 Union Budget as a part of the government's effort to boost employment opportunities. Now, nodal agency, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, objective to bridge the gap between the skill set of unemployed youth and those who need are by the employers. That means the companies who need it and the ones who have the skills and they can basically work in those companies. There's a gap there. So to fill that gap, this internship scheme is there where you can work in the top 500 companies as interns, and if you are, let us say, capable enough, the companies can hire you also. But there are a lot of criteria for selection also that needs to be kept in mind. The project will provide on-job training to 1 crore people in over the time of 5 years. Now, eligibility criteria, open to youth between the age of 21 to 24. So if you are beyond that age or under that, you are not qualified for that. meet the following conditions. Educational qualification, high school pass, ITI, Polytech, BA, BSc, BCom, BBA, BCA. Annual family income should be less than 8 lakhs. Not enrolled in postgraduate program or any government internship or let us say other apprentice scheme. Excludes children of regular government employees and graduates from premier institutions like IITs, IIMs, and NIDs, National Institute of Designs. If you meet these requirements, only then you can apply, otherwise you will be disqualified. So internship details, each applicant should apply to 5 different internships, so the total number of application is not equal to the number of individuals. Interns will work for a year-long tenure starting from December 2nd as per the original timeline. Candidates should specify the preference in the sector, the functional role of the state and the district where they are applying so that they can be accommodated accordingly. Internship features. Internship will last for 12 months, provide exposure to the real world. Participating companies can nominate vendors and suppliers to join the scheme. Companies will appoint nodal officers for grievance redressals, which is going to be monitored by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Now, stipend. Interns will receive a monthly stipend of 5,000 rupees, 500 from the participating companies from the CSR funds, Corporate Social Responsibility Fund, and 4,500 via direct benefit transfer from the side of the government. One-time grant of 6,000 will be provided to cover the incidental expenses before the joining time. So these things are being provided as a measure so that you at least come into the workforce so that the demographic dividend concept can be reaped. Next, multiple choice questions. Question number 1 with options. Answer 1B. Question 2 with options. Answer 2B. Question 3 with options. Answer 3C. Question 4 with options. Answer 4A. Question 5 with respect to wealth tax we had studied right now. Options, answer is 5A. So this was the analysis of Hindu from today's newspaper. Hope you liked it and enjoyed it. We'll be continuing with the session tomorrow. Take care and Jai Hind.